Okay, so I said there was 2 ways of creating a component, or 3, but I was wrong about one of them. So let's add another component, but doing it the other way. So what we can do is we can also add a component in here. We need to be in the directory though. I believe it's better this way. Now there's a set of tools called Angular CLI. I believe they're installed, but if they're not, you can do npm install. Oh, node package npm. Okay, this is the node package manager. This isn't default installed in your Windows installation, so we need to do npm.js. This is a tool used to get JavaScript libraries, right? This is the actual repository. This is where they all come from. When you say, I want to add Angular, Angular is added to the node package manager, or Angular is added to the node package repository, and node package manager is responsible for pulling them down. npm isn't just that though, okay? So we need node. Node.js. Node is a JavaScript runtime. It allows JavaScript code to be run on your machine and like any other tool. And then we need to be able to get the node package manager. It's not installed by default. Okay? Or apparently it is now. Pretty sure it wasn't. Pretty sure you had to install npm separately. But it is now. So what that means is on my machine I can type node, I can see a version, I can type npm and I can see a version. Okay. I believe that 6.9 is perfectly fine. That can cause some issues, but yeah. So once I've done that, I need to get the Angular CLI. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do npm install -g, so that's global. What that means is that's installed on your machine, not just for this program, right? And then I'm going to do @Angular CLI. How I know to do this? If I go to angular.io and getting started, I can follow through these steps. Okay, so this is this step I'm doing right now. We're going to install Angular globally. Then we can use ng to do extra things. I'll show you that in a second. Now there's no harm in running this. It will update, or it will tell me, there, you've already installed, you don't need to do anything. Now the version of your Angular CLI you have on your machine and the version that's actually used for your actual application can be slightly different because I'll show you in our where are you? In our package JSON, you'll see that Angular CLI is also added in here. Okay. Oh, there's something else different as well. I'll look at Angular, right? And I want to get started. And I want to install Angular. Well, how do I get Angular? Stable. There we go. That's what I needed. So there's there you go. There's multiple versions of Angular. at any one time. Some of them are supported for longer, some of them go out of phase, and Angular is constantly changing. What it means is that when Visual Studio was built and created, etc., they created what's called a template that is, here's an application. Here's an application you can start with, so you don't have to do all the wiring up that everybody else would have to do if they wrote this by hand, right? And that's what the tooling is all supposed to do, is to get you to the point where you can build an application rather than spending days preparing for the application. I mean, if you had to add all these files in there and code them all, you'd be there for weeks, right? Someone saved you the time. Okay, just wanted to close them to keep it clean. So, if I open my package JSON, I'll see that my version is out of date. We're currently on 7.214 as the current stable version. I can click here, see Angular releases, the version, the release schedule, when they were released. So 7 was released in October 2018. This is on 6.1. 6 was released May 3rd last year. Active development ended in November, and its long-term support ends this year. So this isn't even supported anymore. Ugh. So it's already out of active support. What do I do? So this is worth knowing. And when you're looking at a tutorial, if they were doing Angular 5 at the time they did the tutorial, or they were doing Angular 2, which is the first version after AngularJS, a lot has evolved, a lot has changed, and you can see that the next stable release is due in just a few weeks, right? And they're saying that, you know, they're always trying to stay one version compatible behind, but that's lofty. So, keeping up to date, how to get notified. These are important things to know if you're going to use a framework, to make sure that you're kept abreast of changes to that framework. Whenever a company like this does a release, they'll do announcements, they'll do change logs. These can make a difference between a feature working and a feature not working. Okay? So, you can see these are all betas of 8. In here we've got, on the 20th of March, we had a 7.2.10 build, which fixed a bundling problem. If you're following a tutorial that says that problem exists and how to fix it, and you're on 7.2.1 and they're covering 7.1, you could be led astray. So it's always worth, if you can, seeing what version of Angular they're using. They might not always show it, but this is the full bug list. These, you can see they're intertwined. 7.2 launched on the 7th of January. Also contains all the fixes released in 7.1.4, so you can jump up a level. And you can see they fixed a lot of things here, right? So it's always worth keeping in touch with the documentation for the frameworks you're using. It's always worth keeping in touch with the release schedule of the things. Okay. That being said, this isn't that scary, okay? What I can do is, now I've got my Angular CLI installed, I can do ng update, I believe. Let's see what that does. What it's telling me is my Angular CLI is around 6.08 precisely. And the current version of Angular CLI is 7.38. My Angular core is on 6.05, and the current version is 7.214, and some other stuff. So I can do this. I can type ng update all. I've kept the file open deliberately. Did that work? Don't think that worked. Package code lies as a missing peer dependency of TS-lint. Package Angular calls an incompatible peer dependency to Zone.js. Requires requires curly brace. Would install 9. Angular compiles CL as an incompatible peer dependency to TypeScript. Requires would install 3.1. Well, this helps with TS linting. CodeLizer is analyzing code. Yeah, I'm not too worried about that. This isn't a massive leap. So what I could do is go and see, does the developer of Zone.js, whoever that is, give me any information on releases? Angular Zone.js. Oh, it's from the Angular team. I heard their build's failing. That's positive to know. Angular, so we got some problems there. But no one's really complaining about this version of Angular, and it's only a small update. TypeScript, well, TypeScript is TypeScript. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to type, I think you can force it. Force ng update. Oh, that's never good. ng update. Yeah, you can do that. So I'm going to type ng update dash all dash force. And what that should do is say, I take your version incompatibilities and ignore them all. So now if I go back here, we should see our versions updated. Now the risk of them was pretty minimal, right? This went past the version that was recommended, so we could always move it back to that version. But we're trying to update it, and we could update them one by one, so that we don't force that dependency. If we have an incompatibility, we can always revert back, and because again we've got it checked out, right? So we can always go into our Team Explorer and change it all. And this is taking a while because it's adding all these new libraries and removing other things and whatnot. And it's going to take some more time. And some more time. Now the reason I'm doing this first, before I do any more Angular or any more, I'll go to SignalR, is because if I do download SignalR and SignalR has been built now, right? The SignalR is likely to be really more compatible with the libraries available since May of last year, right? If I was talking about upgrading from Angular 7.1 to Angular 7.2, I wouldn't worry so much, because that version compatibility isn't likely to be there unless you can find a piece of information that says there's a bug, or there's information that says this version is not compatible with this version. Okay, it's installing everything, it's testing it, it's building it. Yeah, it'll be fine. Yeah, it'll be fine. It's fine. What this does is checks libraries for risks, vulnerabilities, as it says. There's 4 highly vulnerable libraries, and you can find out about them. npm audit will show what is in there that is scary and why it's scary. This is a really good system. If you were go into production, this is worth knowing about. This JS YAML file has vulnerability, and you can go and read that advisory. It could create denial of service because it can be hacked, right? This is the cost of relying upon many libraries. It adds in crap that pollutes your actual environment, etc. You don't need to worry about that if you're just playing around developing. Okay, so you can see our Angular is updated. Does it still run? Yes. Do we still have an app? Ooh. Crap. Let's just run it and keep our fingers crossed that it wasn't just stale. Ooh. Failed to compile. Can't resolve ES7 reflect. Let's make sure our ng update went through. Everything seems to be in order. Let's just make sure we can give it what we want. So what we can do is, what it's saying is, the Angular compiler requires TypeScript greater than 3.1 and less than 3.3, but 3.45 was found. So let's move that down to, and it says less than 3.3, right? So if we're in Visual Studio, what we can do is say tilde. Oh no! Where, there we go. Okay, so 3.45 is the last stable, right? We can go down. They release a lot of development builds, and what we're doing is going to go to the last build before 3.30. The reason we're going to go to the last build is because it has a lot of bug fixes and whatnot in it. Okay, so we got 3.2.4. So we're going to save that, and you can see down here it's going to change, and it's going to install it's going to run basically what we saw run over here. Okay, these symbols before these do have meaning. Okay, I don't want to lie and say I know what I'm talking about. Package.json. Squiggle versus caret. Tilde versus caret. The tilde matches the most recent patch version, the third number for the specified minor version, the second number. 1.2.3 will match all 1.2.x versions, but we'll hold off on 1.3. So this prevents it. This, if 3.2.5 was released, 3.2.6 was released, 3.2.9 was released, they'd upgrade, but it will not go above 3.2. This means go to the highest possible version. Yeah. Okay. Highest possible for this version. Alright. So it won't upgrade to, so Angular does not have the caret in front of it. If I put the caret there, it will only upgrade to versions of 7. If 8 releases, it will not update to 8. So Core.js will not, RxJS will not upgrade to 7, but it will upgrade to the highest 6 version. Okay. Let's stop. I think it was building and running then, but let's make sure it's going to build and run. Fingers crossed, we don't have any compatibility issues. Oh, that don't look good, does it? Cannot resolve core.js ES7 reflect. So what this looks like is it's a compatibility issue with TypeScript, which is probably why it was excluded. And what's happened is TypeScript is doing one thing that the rest of it doesn't like. So what they're saying is change our TS config, which is here, and add in compiler options. Sorry. So we have compiler options and paths. Do we have paths? We don't have paths. Okay, so we're going to copy paths and paste it in here. And that gives it access to that data that it's talking about, is how I'm understanding that. So we should see it rebuild. But I have to change a TS file for that one. Give it another chance. So these are the pitfalls, right? The pitfalls are, you know, it could just go all badly wrong. Sometimes things don't always work. Sometimes you have to do a bit more hunting to get to the actual answer. Compile successfully. Refresh my app. Huzzah, we have an app again. Okay, so a bit of perseverance. We got there in the end. Okay. Let us continue on to SignalR. But not before we update this. So you can see only 3 files changed here, but we did a whole load of downloading, etc. In the git ignore, the node underscore modules library is there because that's where all that JavaScript lies. We do not want to screw with that. So there's our TS config. That's what we added there. Here's our package JSON. These are all the versions we changed. So we went up from 2.72 of TypeScript to 3.24. You get the idea. Dev dependencies are tools that are used throughout the development. Dependencies are things that are going to get bundled with the application when that gets pushed out to the actual application. And package.lock.json, I'm not going to double click on that one. Package.lock.json is used by the NPM tool to keep track of what it's got. It's a utility class. Updated to Angular 7.2. Okay. So now we have a working Angular app. All our stuff works. Everything's good. Let's screw it all up and add SignalR. Okay. So this is the primary one I'm going to add. Okay. So we have 2 components to SignalR. There's a server and a client. SignalR works when client in JavaScript communicate to an endpoint primarily a hub for right now in C#. Okay, and the way it works is through a variety of methods. There are several techniques available. WebSockets is one. Long polling is a fallback method. There are other ways of doing it. Either way, it is basically SignalR is constantly making a connection or has a connection to our web server. When the client starts up, it says establish this connection, and when you see me do things, take this data, and when I need to know things, I've got a connection open, I'll take that data off you. So it's a two-way journey, right? When you make a web request, so you want a page, right? The page isn't, you aren't sending data to the server to say get me this page, to update the page. You're saying, okay, you make a request, it goes to the server, okay, then the server sends a response, and you get a page. Okay, that's great, but it's kind of expensive to be established all the time to make that request and then get a response, etc. So what SignalR does is it always has a connection open to the server in the background, and that's what helps it look like magic. But there's two components. There's a server components of SignalR, which is telling the tooling to start up and put in all the right parts so it knows how to listen and connect, and the client side, which is, okay, now I want to connect. So there's libraries on the client and libraries on the server. So we're going to go to dependencies. We're going to go manage Nuget packages. By default, it's going to show what we've got installed. Pretty minimal with the new version of .NET Core. And we're going to type Angular. No. We're going to type SignalR. Phew, that could have been messy. So we're going to install SignalR. This, I believe, is an older version. No. Oh, okay. This is SignalR. This is the server components. If you want, you can actually use SignalR in a desktop application as well. It's not limited to just client-side code, website. If you wanted an application to be running on your machine that was telling you, oh, this happened, from the website, this happened, you can also do that using this library. Also useful on a mobile device. So this is .NET Standard version 2. So this is using .NET Standard libraries. So this is available to you to run on mobile devices. So you can actually have mobile devices listening and polling for information and getting live updates. But we're going to install SignalR. I'm going to accept the license because why not? Oh no. What are you doing? Did you install or did you not install? You installed, but you whined about stuff. Okay, that is because the linting tools, the tools that go through and look after TypeScript and make sure everything's working fine, are complaining about problems in lint. So these are not errors. But I believe right now what it's doing is doing something with Node, with a Node package manager. Yeah. Our app builds and runs. Yeah, it's for some reason passing through the entire Node modules package and trying to make sense of it. Let's not worry about that right now. Let's proceed. Okay, so that's the server side of Node. I want to say Node. SignalR added in, but there's way more wire up, right? And on the client side, we can do npm install. Now it's npm install because there are no tooling. There is no tooling around SignalR in this, so we can just do npm install. If you're adding components and stuff, and we'll see that in a minute, you can use ng to add libraries that do things when they install. We're going to ASP.NET / SignalR. Run the slash. Okay. And again, I'm going to ignore this for right now. There was no complaints about it couldn't find SignalR. And the way we check that is we go into our client app, go to package JSON, and there's SignalR. So the client side is version 1.1.4. Okay. So that's SignalR installed on both ends, but it does nothing yet. So the way we get it to do stuff is we come in here, and we can now say services dot add SignalR. So we've got add SignalR, and then up here we're going to say app use SignalR. Okay, and this needs configuration. So what this is telling SignalR, or telling the middleware, all the application stack that gets called when you make a request to the server. Everything comes up, and your request comes up, and the server says, okay, what do I need to do with this? I've got a route, I've got this, I need to do this, right? And what this is doing is allowing us to map a hub. And we're going to call this our client hub. Okay? And it needs a path. And we're going to call that so we're going to call this notifications hub. And we're going to go to notifications. So that's going to be the path that we tell SignalR on the JavaScript side, or TypeScript side, hey, use this path. And that is really going to annoy me. So I'm going to create a new folder. I'm going to call it hubs. I don't believe this matters what we call this. We could call this things that I care about, or things that the client connects with. There's no naming convention on hubs. It's just, can you find it again? If you know, oh, go to the hub. Where do I find the hub? If it's in things I don't care about or whatever. We're going to do new item. And all I'm doing there is hitting tab. Just move through everything. We're going to create a class. We're going to call it notifications hub. Okay. So now, okay. Again, in Visual Studio, if you hit Control period, right, it will help you in some way, but this is not the way. I have ReSharper installed, But in Visual Studio, if you hit Control period when you have a file and you know it exists, it will often give you a hint to help you add this type in, so you don't have to go and figure out what you need to type in there. And what you need to do is, if you do import type, it will likely put view.hubs.notifications up here. But if we import missing references, the squiggle will go away and we've got view.hubs up here, right? But it's not happy. But I've got a hub. But my hub is not inherited from a SignalR hub. So nothing's telling it this is a SignalR thing, right? So if we go here and type hub, again, if you hit Control period, you can hit enter. It will add Microsoft ASP.NET Core SignalR. We have a hub. Our startup's fine. Yep, everything's happy. Okay. Go to our notifications hub. All is well. I'm going to stop on this piece for right a second and explain a bit more. On the client, we are going to do so we have the client installed in Angular, right? Oh, and another thing to see here is this says with Angular 5. So we know now that we're on Angular 7, Angular 8 is about to release, so Angular 5 is over 2 years old at this point. They do 2 releases a year, so they upgrade an entire version number every single year. But I'm not after that. I don't care about any of this right this second. What we need to do is create a hub, right? And that hub will move data back and forth. The way they're doing it there is confusing. .NET Core, SignalR. I'm just trying to find the right discussion. JavaScript client. Okay, so this is current. So we've done this part. We don't need to do that part now because we're using it in Angular. You'll see why in a second. Okay. Okay. And we'll worry about that part in a second again. Okay. So let's go to our client. And let's add in a new component. And I said I'd show a different way of doing a component. So Angular knows that the app folder is where components are going to live, right? Because that's the way it's set up. The app module is in there. It'll be fine. So while we're in here, we can type ng generate. So this is the Angular tool, the Angular CLI tool. We're going to send it generate. And if we hit enter, it will give us advice because it needs more. And we can create things inside of Angular. These are called schematics, right? Where we're scaffolding out this stuff. And we can also pass in some other options. But in this case, we're going to create a component. The others you can learn about more later. So you're going to generate component, and we're going to create it in our app folder, so we don't need to do anything special there. And we're going to call this the friend. We're going to call it the friend message component. We don't need to say component. It's going to be implicit. You'll see what happens in a second. So I don't have to delete this and recreate it, etc. There's another way of typing this as well, and it's a bit of a typing save. You can type ng g generate component c friend message. And when I hit enter, if everything's working fine, more than one module matches. Use skip import option to skip importing the component to the closest module. This happens because there's an app module there, and yeah, why does it do that? Okay, so if I go into cd source cd app, and then I do nggc friend message, do you still do that? You still do that? Oh well. nggc friend message space module app. Now this app here is this app here, right? It's this, right? It's this. It knows that this is our application, okay? Modules are a bundling of components. A module can be imported into another module. It's an organizational component, but we have to tell this which module you're going in, because apparently it's found another module and it doesn't like the fact that we're being vague about it. So we're going to tell it which module. So now when we hit that, we're going to see a folder created. Now you can see I put friend message with a lowercase f and a capital M, and it created friend-message. That's a standard. We also now have 4 files because it by default creates CSS and by default creates spec. I don't want that. I don't. This spec thing is just wasting time. Delete the folder. And I think we can do no spec. We'll know pretty quick if it can't do it. There we go. So we can turn off the spec. It's just another file. It isn't going to hurt you. Option spec is deprecated. Use skip tests. There we go. It's educating us on the usage. We wouldn't see that if we're using tools inside. But we don't need it. We're not going to write tests because, like I said, that is a whole different discipline. And you can see this has dumped this out for us. Okay. ng on init is a event that happens, so this implements on init, and this happens when the object is created every single time. So when the page focuses on this is going to get called. It has friend message works. It adds it into our modules for us, right? So now the module knows about this component. And it doesn't give us this, but let's just do to be fair, we didn't have any way of saying, hey, also add it to routing. That might have been there. I never know. Okay, so we go back here. Call it message. Because of all the changes we made, it's disconnected it. That's all. That's all that's happened there. What? Okay. So what happened there was the TypeScript version went nuts. I got messed up, and I just had to. So Angular 7.2 has a dependency on a minimum 3.1.1, but the latest version we're using that wasn't 3.3 seemed to have the issues that it didn't know what TypeScript was anymore. So that's what errored that. Okay. So we need to add it into our nav. Our nav menu is what's missing there. So I'm not going to put you through the pain of seeing that again. I'm going to do message. Okay. We should see this reload. We have a message. Friend message works. Okay. So, SignalR. SignalR requires a few components. Put that in there. Import SignalR. Import, let's see, star from ASP.NET SignalR. I think you can do star there. SignalR. Yeah. Hub connection builder. The way that they're doing it is showing it their way. Log level. The way they're showing it here is the way that it would be used in regular JavaScript. Well, this isn't regular JavaScript. This has types and namespaces and all that fun. That green squiggle is my resharper tool complaining at me again. So we have a connection builder, and we called it notifications, didn't we, in our hub. So if I look back at startup, recording notifications, that's what we're wiring up here. We're wiring up that route looking thing, which is actually the server. Configure logging is optional. That is saying log out any information. So in the SignalR library itself, it will have pieces of information that it could hand out. And then we're going to say connection start, then it'll be TypeScript connected. So if we go back here now, what we might see is connected. Information using the hub protocol, JSON, WebSocket connected to localhost notifications, normalizing notifications. So we have a connection to our hub. Awesome. Our hub doesn't do anything. And right now everything's in our ng on it. So let's do this. Let's go into our friend message component and let's add messages to friends by Bob. Back to the CSS, eh? Let's go into the actual HTML so it actually renders something. And let's put a div here and a form. Don't know if we need a form, but let's see. And I'm going to do input type equals text, name equals no. I'm going to do ng model. Is that the modern way of doing it? There's a new way of doing it and an old way of doing it, and I don't want to screw it up. ng model. Haha. I was wrong. So we have, this is what I was talking about before with parentheses. This is two-way binding. This is saying I can update that value and I can set that value, right? I can update that value and set. I can retrieve that value and I can set that value. We're going to call this message. Placeholder is enter message here. Go back to our view. Oh no. So Angular has some quirks on forms. What we're doing here is called two-way binding. Angular 7. Two-way binding, target, expression, two-way event and property, two-way binding. We won't worry about that in a second. Style of font size picks, yeah. I'm wondering, what I'm checking is there a different way of doing what I'm trying to do? I don't believe there is. ng model, two-way binding to form elements, yeah. Technically I don't need two-way binding, but I believe this is template-driven forms with a model binding. The documentation, once you start to get used to what you're looking at, is super helpful. It's just getting over that part first. what I'm looking for here is, I think it's dynamic forms. The problem I've got is the style of forms. You can see this template, form validation, reactive forms, dynamic forms, and I just want a simple damn form. It makes it hard at times. Right, because you see, set up in template. Oh, we're template-driven forms. That's what we are. Right. Then it doesn't show it. ng model class equals. Okay. I'm not making that difficult. It's just okay. So I think if I do this, I go message form equals ng form. I think that's doing all it needs to do. Nope. Name equals, oh, this name. Name equals message. That'll work. There we go. Derp. Okay, and we're going to have a button. And if you remember earlier on, we had button primary. Type equals button. Buttons can be button, submit, and clear. If it's a clear one, a reset button, it will reset a form, so you can clear out the message, etc. And then we're going to do click equals send message. Okay. And send message is going to send the message, but we have a field that we want. Public message is a string. That is this. Okay. If I start this, if I do this, equals hello world. What we should see is this is hello world. Okay. And our button needs to send. There we go. Let's do a bit of formatting. Rude not to. Form field div class equals form group. Okay, and yeah. So now we need to send this. Okay, but we've got our connection in here. And that's great that it started and everything's working, but that doesn't really help us here. So we need a private, no, a connection, which is an I. It's a hub connection, I think. Yep. Right. And this dot connection dot start, because we need to send a message. Okay. And then we're going to do send message. And we're going to do this dot connection dot send notify others, and it's going to be message is message this dot message dot then. Why is that dot then? Good. This dot message equals. I'm going to clear the message out when we've sent it. Okay, so we should be able to say this is a nice message. Message is gone. Nothing happened. Okay, so now is a good time to go back to the server. But we've added our component, we've added some functionality for our component. It's wide up. We don't want to lose that. If we screw up the server component, this should be a good point to get back to, right? Before, well, SignalR was establishing the connection. Everything's kind of working. We're all good. So let's go and added component for friend message SignalR is up and running. Again, that keeps us to a good point. Okay. We now, this is like a 3-hour video. We'll see. Okay, so we now go to our server. We're not running. We don't need a sample data controller on it. We have a notifications hub. Now, the magic here is what will happen. SignalR will send up this notify others message, right? And it will send it with this body. Okay, this will be the body of the message. You can send up an object. You can send up complex data. We need a method up here that corresponds to that. So we have public async void, I believe. We'll verify that. Notify others, and it takes a, let's call it friend message, right? And if we call that public class friend message, and it has a public string message, that wires up to this, or more precisely this. This is the content of that string called message, and this is our property on our class called message, right? Now it's got a squiggle. This is again my resharper tool, but it's telling me, hey, you've said this is an async method. You said this is a method that has an async type, and there's no implementation for it. You've never used it. So what I can do is type await. Async await is a little bit more advanced than you need to get into right now. What it is it's the ability to say, okay, hook up this method, and don't use too many resources. But when I'm ready, I'll tell you, and we can talk. Then we're going to do clients. Now, clients is a component of hub, right? That's why you don't see clients anywhere else. Clients hub is a class, is a type that has implementation in it, and it has all the wire up for what we're talking about when we're saying map hub to notifications. Okay. And when everyone's connected, they're all lined up with this hub. Okay, so they're all wired up into this hub behind the scenes. And we're going to tell all the clients, we're going to send async. If I can type, that would help. And we're going to send yell shout my message. This is C#, not JavaScript. Single quotes mean character. Strings are made up of double quotes. And we're going to send forward our message. Right? And that's it. Okay. Now, we need to receive that message somewhere. Right. If I put a breakpoint here, run the application. Refresh that so we load up the application properly. Make sure everything's running. We got all our initialization. SignalR is connected. We can see all that. Then I send a message from me. I get here, I have a friend message, and the friend message says message from me. Great. Where did it go? Well, I got here. Well, there's no other clients connected, but I'm also a client, so I should receive that message somewhere, right? So this is where message subscriptions come into play. Now it's important you know this. Message subscriptions have to come before, you have to set this up before you start the connection. If you set it up after the connection, it won't work correctly. This .connection .on quotes. Now this is method name. Shout my message. This is the method we're calling on the clients. And then we need a method to call. Okay. And let's do public messages with a string array. Right. We're then going to say, so this is going to contain an M of, let's do this, interface, call it shout message for now. Right. This is just to give it some description, and you'll see where this comes important later on. We're going to say this is going to receive an M of shout message, and then we're going to say this messages dot push M dot message. Okay. Now equals. We need to initialize it. I think you can do that, yeah. That starts it off initialized. So now we need to be able to show the messages. So let's go here and div. We'll do pass equals messages. And then we're going to do a div. Now this is a an Angular loop, right? So what we're going to do is go to Angular ng4. No, so we type it as we would if we were searching for it. Angular for loop. ng4 of. This is the Angular IO documentation. This is a this is a course on something else. This says Angular 2. Angular 2 is actually now 5 versions ago. Let's use the documentation first and see if it gives us enough. A structural directive that renders a template for each item in a collection. Sounds like what we want. So the syntax looks like this. Okay. So what we're going to do is with ng4 equals let MSG, I'm going to call it MSG so it doesn't contradict message, our other variable. Doesn't contradict this message. Pointing at the screen does not actually show your viewers of messages. Okay. And we're going to output MSG. Now, I said earlier on, styling can be done here. So we're going to do dot messages. So that's this here. Class means many things in the page can have it, right? An ID, only one thing can have it. So if you see CSS and you see this, that means an element in the page that has an ID on it of message should be styled. But this says anything that has the class of messages on it should be styled. And we're going to do font size 1.2 here. What that means is it will increase the size. It will go 20% bigger than the font of the element it's in. And if that's not sized, then that'll be the size of the ultimate size of the browser text. Okay. Let's refresh that. Make sure everything's running. And this is called Hey Friend. Get a message. So now if I open a completely different browser window, hey, can you read this? No. Why not? Oh, we have SignalR up and running. No extra fluff, no extra mess. And all we did was tell SignalR to use this hub. We made sure SignalR was added as a service. We didn't do anything special with the configuration. I'm going to come back to that right this second. You can see here that in SignalR's own documentation, they say to add these cause policies, etc. If SignalR is being called from different sites, etc., or it's hosted in a different service, then that is absolutely necessary, because you have to say, here's where I'm going to accept my request to. And the cross-origin requests policy is to prevent JavaScript libraries from being able to just request things from other sites or pull things in when they shouldn't be allowed to. It's a control mechanism to help protect people, but sometimes there's a legitimate use for it. But it's kind of like opening a door at a jail, right? You open the wrong door and out comes all the badness. But you still need to open doors sometimes. And badness isn't a word, but you get what I mean. So for the purposes of this demonstration, you don't need the cause policies. We just need the right setup. So now we have an app, we have a good point to commit, we've updated our component, we've added our hub, working hub, we have messages passing back and forth. There we go.